If you're over 50 and looking to gain or regain muscle, then this video is going to give you some great tips to help you do so. If you don't know who I am, my name is Will Harlow and I'm the over 50s specialist physio here at HT Physio in Farnham. And today I'm going to give you 7 tips to help over 50s gain more muscle. Now, it's difficult for over 50s to gain muscle compared to people who are under 50 for a number of different reasons. One of them is that age just works against you. As you get older, you can experience higher rates of muscle loss. We call this sarcopenia. And the research shows that in people who don't exercise very much, they lose about 10% of their muscle mass every decade if they just leave things as they are. So that's quite a scary rate of muscle loss. Now, one of the other reasons that people over the age of 50 have a harder time gaining muscle is because of changes to hormone levels. And this is relevant for both males and females. In males, testosterone drops off quite dramatically as we start to get over the age of 30, 40, and 50, which makes it harder to gain muscle. And in women who get to the age of 40 plus, typically they undergo menopause, which again can destroy their ability to gain muscle and to exercise because of loss of energy and because of differences in protein synthesis as their estrogen basically runs out. We also see higher rates of injury in people over 50, higher rates of things like arthritis, and all of these things can combine to mean that it's harder to stay fit, to keep exercising, and to gain muscle. So what I want to do is present some tips for you today to help you regain or gain muscle if you are over 50, because then hopefully it will give you the best chance of being fit, able and active in your 50s and beyond. So of course, some of these tips are going to be relevant for everybody, but the reason I've presented them for over 50s here is because these are the ones I feel that most of the over 50s I speak to get wrong. And although I'm not a muscle growth specialist, I'm a physiotherapist, I do help people to regain muscle a lot, especially after injury. So let's have a look at the tips now. So the first tip for over 50s to help them gain more muscle is to eat more protein. Now, this is something that everyone nods their head at and says, yeah, I know protein's important for building muscle. But in over 50s, I find that people tend to dramatically undershoot the amount of protein they need in order to properly build muscle. Now, if you tracked your protein intake over the course of a day, you might be surprised at how low it is, because for many people, we don't eat enough protein. Now, protein is basically the building blocks that our body uses to synthesize muscle. So the more protein you eat, the more available amino acids you have in your body, and these are used as the building blocks to grow new muscle and to get you stronger. Now, the guidelines for people from the government to eat protein fall somewhere in the region of sort of 60 to 70 grams of protein per day. But for building muscle, that doesn't tend to be the optimal range. It might be enough for just health, but if you want to build muscle, you need more. Now, what we usually recommend for people who are looking to gain muscle is to eat somewhere in the region of 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight per day. So if I am a 190-pound man, that means to gain muscle, I should be shooting for something around the region of 190 grams of protein per day. You might be thinking, wow, that sounds like an awful lot. And it is. It doesn't mean you have to eat that much every day, but shooting towards that range tends to be optimal for muscle synthesis. Now, before you just dive in and eat loads of protein all in one go, it's important to check that you have healthy kidneys and to make sure that there isn't any other reason, medical or otherwise, why you shouldn't be eating this much protein. Now, when we're looking at body weight and trying to discuss how many grams per day to eat based on body weight, if you're very overweight, you don't want to be eating as much as you weigh. You want to be probably cutting it down to your target body weight. So if you weigh 250 pounds, but you know that a lot of that is fat, you might want to shoot for 150 pounds instead, because that might be what you're aiming to get down to. Now, protein can be found in lots of different sources. We've got meat and fish and eggs from the sort of animal side of things, but you can also find it in nuts, you can find it in certain vegetables, you can find it in tofu. There are lots of different areas of sort of the dietary spectrum that you can find protein in, and it's just finding something that works for you. If you're not finding you're getting enough protein, you can supplement with a shake or with protein bars, but we'd much prefer to get it from whole food sources first. Now, the second tip for over 50s who want to gain more muscle is to make sure you're in a slight calorie surplus. Now, a calorie surplus just means that you're eating slightly more calories than you're burning every day. So let's say that I know that I burn 2,500 calories as a normal healthy male every day just to stay alive and be active. If I wanted to gain muscle, it would be wise for me to increase my calorie intake slightly above the 2,500 mark. So for example, I might aim for 2,800 calories or 3,000 calories a day. This means that my body has excess calories in my system and it can use those excess calories to build muscle. Now, I'm afraid to say it's a myth for many people that they can build muscle and lose fat at the same time. Some people might be able to, but most of us who aren't that genetically gifted can't. So we have to choose whether we want to gain muscle or lose fat. We can't really do both at the same time. So if you want to gain muscle, it's important that you're eating a little bit more than you're burning. Now, this isn't licensed to just go out and eat anything you want. You still have to be careful with the types of foods you eat. You want to shoot for good quality carbohydrates and fats, things like whole grains, rice. You might choose sourdough bread, you might choose potatoes, anything that you can add to your diet that healthily increases your calorie intake is going to help you contribute to gaining muscle. This doesn't mean you should go out and eat McDonald's or eat high fat foods or things with lots of trans fats, because these aren't necessarily going to help you with your goal and may contribute to more fat gain rather than muscle gain. But it's a fact that you must eat a few more calories than normal if you wish to gain muscle. Now, the third tip for over 50s who want to gain more muscle is to understand that walking is not enough. Now, walking is a fantastic exercise, don't get me wrong. It's one of the best things that over 50s can do for general health. But it's not going to be enough resistance to gain muscle in your legs or anywhere else. The only exception to this rule is if you've had a very serious injury and you've lost a lot of muscle mass, then getting moving again might be enough to stimulate muscle growth. But if you're just at a normal baseline, walking is not going to provide enough of a stimulus to help you gain muscle in your lower limbs. You need to use external resistance or body weight in order to actually gain muscle mass, and just walking is not quite enough. So don't stop walking, but you need resistance training as well. Now, the fourth tip for over 50s who want to gain more muscle is to not fear heavy weights. Now, when I'm talking about heavy weights, I'm not talking about 300, 400 pound barbells on the floor. I'm talking about weights that feel heavy to you. And we know that resistance training is definitely necessary to build muscle for any age group. But what I often see in the gym is people over 50 gravitate straight to the machine weights with the lowest pin in there, and they just do 20, 30 repetitions without really making themselves tired, or they pick up the smallest dumbbells and just do little movements like this. And to be honest, that's not the best way to get bang for your buck when you're over 50. What you need to be doing is training in a lower rep range, ideally, probably less than 20 repetitions. And by the end of your set, so you might do 7, 8, 9 repetitions, the exercise should feel hard. It should feel like the muscles are tired. That doesn't mean you have to pick up really heavy weights from the floor. It doesn't mean you need to squat with weight on your back. It just means that it should be challenging, and you should have run out of energy by the time you get somewhere between 5 and 20 repetitions in a row. Obviously, everyone's different, so I can't tell you exactly how to train, but I can just tell you what the research shows us, and that tends to be the most effective way to build muscle. Work in the 5 to 20 repetition range, a couple of sets of each exercise, and you probably want to do at least 5 different exercises per session. Now, the fifth tip to help over 50s to gain more muscle, and this relates to the last one, is to understand volume and overload. Now, the term volume means the total amount of work you do in any given week or month or day, and overload means slowly progressing that over time. Now, one of the big mistakes I see with over 50s is they will choose an exercise that they like, they'll pick up a weight, they'll do 3 sets of 10 of that exercise, and then they'll do the exact same exercise, 3 sets of 10 next week, and then the same again next week, then the same again the week after. And basically what you're doing is you're doing the exact same volume and you're not doing any overload work at all. So you're not progressing. So what you need to do every time you get into the gym is try and do a tiny little bit more than you did the previous week. And I promise you, as long as you do it safely with good form, you will see improvements over time. So you have to keep pushing your body. Your body wants to stay as it is. It doesn't really want to change. You need to give it the impetus to change, and we do that by making it incrementally harder. Now, the 6th tip to help over 50s to gain more muscle is to always choose compound moves if you can. Now, there are 2 types of exercises for the human body. The first type is an isolation exercise, which is a movement that just involves one joint and typically just one muscle group. And then there are the second type, which are the compound exercises, which involve multiple joints and multiple muscle groups. So for example, an isolation exercise would be a bicep curl because it's just one joint, the elbow, and one muscle group, the elbow flexors, the biceps and the muscles underneath it. And then an example of a compound move would be the squat, which involves the hips, the knees, the ankles, and it involves the gluteal muscles at the back, it involves the quads at the front, some hamstrings as well. It also involves the muscles that are lower down in the leg too. So you can see that if I did 3 sets of 10 on the bicep curl or 3 sets of 10 on the squat, I would do a dramatically different amount of work between those two. So with the squat, I'm doing 3 or 4 times the amount of effort and getting hopefully 3 or 4 times the results than if I did just the bicep curl. So what we want to do is we want to choose exercises that use more muscle groups ideally, just because it's more time efficient, it's better for the metabolic system, it evokes more muscle growth, and it's even been shown to release more testosterone in men too than doing isolation moves. And then the 7th tip to help over 50s to gain more muscle is to get more sleep. Now, this is a universal fact for just about everyone. If you want to improve your health and to improve your ability to gain muscle, you must be sleeping more. What happens as we get older is we tend to actually sleep less. So people who might have an average of 8 hours when they're younger tend to only have 6 or 7 hours as they get older. But this does inhibit the ability of the body to build muscle. What we want to be shooting for is at least 8 hours of sleep every night, preferably 9 if you really want to gain more muscle. The more sleep you get, it tends to be the more you will grow, because sleep is where muscle protein synthesis happens and it's where muscle growth occurs. It's also where you recover, where your body repairs, and where you become refreshed and ready to go again the next day. So here are a few simple tips to improve your sleep when you're over 50. You want to dim the lights early on in the evening. You want to stop using your screens at least an hour before bedtime. So put away your TV, your laptop, and your phone at least an hour before you go to bed. You want to use an eye mask at nighttime to block out any of the light in the room. And you want to make your room into what we would call a bat cave, so as dark as you possibly can, so it doesn't interfere with sleep. You want to cut caffeine early in the day, so preferably stop drinking caffeine around lunchtime. You want to keep your room cold, ideally around 16 degrees centigrade, because that's shown to be the best temperature for sleep. You want to stop eating at least a couple of hours before bedtime, because processing the food in the stomach can interrupt sleep. And you also want to stop drinking at least an hour or 2 before bedtime, so you're not woken up in the night needing a pee. The other thing that can help some people is to take a magnesium supplement. Obviously, that's not going to be suitable for everyone, but it has been shown to improve depth and quality of sleep, especially magnesium threonate. So have a look at that, check with your GP before you start. But those are my tips to help over 50s to gain more muscle. I hope that's been useful. If it has, please leave a comment below. And if you want to get more from me, you can pick up a copy of my book. It's called Thriving Beyond 50, and you can find it on Amazon using the link below. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll speak to you on the next one.